Welcome to the REAL-Lationship Toolbox. We're hosts and marriage service technicians Cliff and Andrea Riley. We're so glad you could join us. Today's show is part 2 of our series, The Road to Recovery. So here's a brief recap from part 1.
When we talked about what follows a traumatic event, like a health crisis, a fire, the loss of a loved one, a financial crisis, a natural disaster, or even a pandemic. When the initial event has passed, there will always be a recovery period, the aftermath.
Last time, we opened up about the struggles we faced in our marriage.
It was like traveling through a long, dark tunnel. And it took us more than a decade to recover from it.
We learned a lot during the process. Thank God we eventually saw light.
And like they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, we're stronger and wiser for it.
So, if you haven't seen episode 2, you can check all our shows out on our website, themarriagetech.com, or on demand at phillycam.org.
Well, as marriage service technicians, our mission is to equip relationships with tools to go the distance. So there's no way that we would have ended the show without first diving into our toolbox and revealing one of the tools that we've learned to use along the way.
We shared the first step from our book, The Road to Recovery. So step 1 is to reveal. In other words, we have to gather the courage to assess the damage and acknowledge exactly where we've landed.
We didn't like where we landed, but we still needed to face it and be honest about it.
Yes, we discussed questions to ask yourself to help you assess the damage. On our follow-up podcast, we talked about how to pour out your pain and receive healing. So, audience, if you missed our show or the podcast, you gotta check them out.
You heard them. Now today, let's cover some more steps on the road to recovery. A good place for us to pick up is step 2, release.
Good call. Releasing involves forgiveness and letting go. But letting go of what?
I got something for you. How about the past, negative emotions, anger, bitterness, regret, hatred, revenge?
Exactly. All the residue associated with the event. Think about it like this. Let's say you had a jug of insecticide and then decided to recycle the container and maybe to make Kool-Aid in it. The residue from the bug spray will contaminate the drink.
Ew, that sounds gross.
It does. There is this saying that unforgiveness is like you drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
Now that is a true statement. Personally speaking, I am convinced that the residue from my negative emotions that were churning on the inside of me, they definitely cause health problems.
That's why we can't drink the Kool-Aid.
In our story, my residue consisted of bitterness and resentment mostly, but it was some other nasty emotions mixed up in there. It was not pretty. I had to forgive you, of course, because I blamed you for the whole situation. And I also had to forgive God because I was really mad at him for 2 reasons. First, I felt like he could have prevented you from making a bad decision in the first place. And then second, he could have stepped in and rescued me out of the situation instead of leaving me there in that financial nightmare for 10 years. And at that time, I felt like the Lord had abandoned me. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't mad at you or the Lord all day, every day for 10 years. But there were definitely times when certain circumstances would come up and they trigger me. And they take me back to that negative state of mind. But because I love the Lord and I love you, I pray and cry and work my way through it. And I'll be in a good space again. That is, until the next trigger occurred. I was just stuck in this perpetual cycle.
I get it. I was dealing with some cycles as well. And I had to do some releasing too. I had to forgive myself. I didn't discern God's voice. He was speaking to me through you, Andrea. And I had to forgive the people who I felt had led me astray. I had to release the disappointment over losing my job and the technicality that shortened me 2 months severance pay. I was stuck in a cycle of guilt, shame, regret. It rocked me to the core. It shook my faith.
I was right there with you.
We both was messed up. You know, there were times that I wasn't sure if our relationship would even get back on track. Sweetheart, how did you recover from the residue?
One of the things that helped me was Hebrews 4:15. It tells us that Jesus is touched by the feelings of our infirmities or our weaknesses. He faced all the same tests that we do, but he didn't sin. So he understands what abandonment feels like.
Yeah, he cried out on the cross, Father, Father, why hast thou forsaken me?
And the final word he uttered while he was hanging there was, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Jesus had to trust that after he died and went to hell, that the Father would raise him up to life again. And when it was all said and done, that's exactly what I had to do. I had to commit my life into the Heavenly Father's hands, and I had to trust that after all my hopes had died, after I passed through my living hell, that he would raise my hopes and expectations to life again. I had to trust him to heal my damaged emotions and heal my body too.
Wow, that was powerful.
Well, honey, you were dealing with some residue. How did you recover?
All the turmoil made me re-examine what I believed. But this time, I didn't base it on what other people told me. I studied God's word for myself. The book of Romans tells us that all things work together for the good of those who love God. The situation wasn't good, but it caused me to seek God more diligently. And that was good. And I learned to hear his voice. It taught me humility, and it broke layers of stubbornness. It caused me to change.
Yes, I admit that we both changed and we both grew from it.
And it worked together for your good too, sweetheart. Because at the end of the day, you got a better version of me than you had before, baby.
I concur. I do have a better version. Just think, if I had walked away, some other woman would have reaped the benefits from my suffering. I don't think so.
Well, this is a good time to introduce our special guest. They're coming to share a part of their journey with us.
Okay. James and Eugenia Coleman have been married for 37 years. They have 3 beautiful children and 5 precious grandchildren. They pastor Restoration Worship Center in Sicklerville, New Jersey. Pastor Gina is multi-talented. She's a dancer, a choreographer, a vocalist, and an interior designer. Now she leads a women's ministry and she has 2 YouTube channels. Pastor James is multifaceted as well. He's a photographer, a videographer, a singer, and he's produced Christian TV shows. They both minister in prisons and shelters, and they've ministered internationally in Trinidad, Uganda, Jamaica, Zambia, Suriname, and in Canada. Now, we've known the Coleman for many, many years. And 2 things we know about them is that they have a heart to serve others and they love the Lord. Hello, James and Gina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Hello.
Glad to be here.
You've recently celebrated your 37th wedding anniversary. Congratulations on making it that far.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you made quite a buzz on social media after you posted those quarantine anniversary pics.
Yeah. People seem to like what we decided to do. Well, I did it. He just showed up.
Yeah, she did it. I just showed up. Normally we do something. We go out to a nice restaurant or go somewhere. But because of the quarantine, she actually thought outside the box, and we still wanted to celebrate. So she came up with that idea, and it was a great idea. Um, I'm just glad she thought of it because I didn't know what to do.
Now, I know somebody looking at those pictures and thinking, wow, they still in love after 37 years? How do they do it? Guys, we've known you for like 25 years, and that you had some bumps in the road, just like just like the rest of us. Would you tell us about a time you had to release or forgive?
Which one? Oh, let's see.
37 years gives a lot of examples.
Yeah. I think the biggest one for me was probably adultery. Just because that was like personally against me. It attacked my well-being as far as security and who I am as a woman or whatever. And it took me a long time. I can't say that it was overnight. It probably took me, I don't know, a lot of years to actually really let go and really realize that it really wasn't anything bad about me that caused it to happen.
Hmm.
Wow, that's a blessing. Because many people don't even survive that kind of thing. So, like, what pointers can you give to our viewers? Or, like, how can they move past something like that?
What I think that we always knew about each other, in spite of the craziness, we really genuinely loved each other. I believe that that's what held us together, along with the prayers of people and, Jesus just helping us along the way. I really do believe that that was it, that we really genuinely loved each other.
That's awesome, Gina. James, how did you feel when all this was going on?
I actually we were like as she said, it was kind of early on, so we were still pretty young. At least for me, I wasn't good at relationships. I was pretty selfish, and you know, at this point, you look to your parents' marriage, you look to your parents' friends' marriage, and kind of see how things go. My expectation was delusional, and so I didn't enter into the marriage, I think, with a good frame of mind, a good understanding of what a husband was supposed to be and what he was supposed to do. And so that kind of carried over into the early stages of our marriage. I really didn't understand what I was doing and how to do it. I was just kind of playing it by ear and based upon some experiences from before. But I wasn't good at relationships, and I wasn't good at feeling what the being empathetic and trying to feel what she felt and what it meant to her. Where I've had the ability to kind of not necessarily conquer the thing, but to move past some things and move on. And so I just kind of moved on and moved past the thing with the expectation that time would essentially heal that wound, which is what most people expect. But I didn't understand the intensity of that breach in a relationship and what it meant to her.
Now that you've become the role model that others are looking at for an example, so, like, what can you tell us that you know now, 37 years down the road, that you wish you had known back then?
Well, I would think one thing is preparation is key, right? We were young, so not that I took marriage lightly, but I wasn't well versed in what it entailed. So my advice would be to not to rush into it, to have a complete understanding of the position of the husband and the wife, and know what your responsibilities are, and know what the expectations are, and have some serious conversations with each other about those expectations,
I think counseling is really important. We didn't receive our first counseling until like 10 or 11 years into the marriage. We had maybe,
Oh wow.
so we had already had a whole bunch of stuff happening by that time. And that's really important to get before somebody and help them to direct you in the way that you should go. Counsel is so important. It really is. Or some really good friends that know how to counsel.
Deliverance.
That's good too, because I think that if we had some counsel before, real counsel like they do now before weddings, we would maybe would have had those same problems, but know how to handle them better. We handled the problems how we knew how to handle them, and they were not right.
Now, Gina, you hit the nail on the head about counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you guys know premarital counseling is one of our specialties.
Right. Yeah. We like to get them before they do all that damage to each other.
That's right.
That's some good stuff. We'll hear more from the Colemans a little bit later.
Now, back to the journey. Another step on the road to recovery is to reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, viewers, we'll give you a little backdrop. In our book, we trace the story of David found in 1 Samuel. So reconnect is step number 6 in David's story.
But in reality, each of our stories is different and our journeys are different.
Sometimes, when I think about aftermath, I picture 9/11. I mean, I was on my way to New York to do a job on one of the towers that morning.
Right.
I remember the confusion, the chaos, the disconnection it caused. Traffic was literally at a standstill on the turnpike. Communication was down. I reached out to you, Andrea, and we lost communications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I heard your voice, and then all of a sudden, I hear this woman on the line. I'm like, who are you? And she's asking me, well, who are you? So I hung up and I tried calling you again. And this time I got some guy on the line. It turns out that our signals were crossed.
At the time, I'm out in the middle of the road, not even sure what was going on. I mean, I could see smoke from across the river. People were getting out of their cars. There was a sense of confusion, like we were all disoriented. In the midst of the crisis, my first inclination was to connect with you, sweetheart.
In the same way that the lines of communication had broken down in a literal sense across the airways, traumatic events can cause communication to break down across relationships. I mean, there are times that we need to really become intentional about connecting or reconnecting with each other.
For our viewers, connecting might look a little different for other couples. But for the past 20 years, we've been intentional about staying connected through praying together each day. We call prayer our master key.
Also known as our secret sauce.
Praying builds a strong bond.
You bond with the one you're praying for,
The one you're praying with,
and the one you're praying to. God, of course.
and that's the bond which held us together during the most challenging times.
All right, let's check in with our guests. They have something to say on this subject. So, James and Gina, we were really excited to hear about a recent commitment that you made surrounding prayer. Would you tell us about it?
Yes, I will. Well, the prayer, we were praying together, but I believe initially we were praying together out of duty because that's what the Lord said to do. And we did it, but it felt like work. So we had an argument and I went to him and I said, can you commit to praying with me for 30 days? Can you just really do that? Because the Lord said, pray. And from that moment, he said, yeah. He said, yeah, I could commit. But from the first time that we prayed, it felt much better. And I don't want to cry because that's what I do, but I'm going to cry. It felt much better than anytime we've ever prayed before. It was easier. It was the timing of God, even though he had said to pray many, many times. the time, we just had the time to do it, and I believe our hearts was right, not to just to pray, but they were right towards God. I asked him, I see you changing, but what's happening? How? And he said the Lord reminded him of what he preached, which is do your part. Take it away, honey.
And that's the part that we usually get wrong, is we sit back and stand back and wait for God to do everything, and we choose to do nothing. So he reminded me of that. So there wasn't much that I could say when he reminds me of my own words, right? Just like when we remind God of his own word, we expect him to honor it. So when he reminded me of my word, I had no choice but to honor it.
Wow, that is good. Oh, that's some good stuff, y'all.
Praise God.
So I hear Pastor Gina saying how Pastor James changed. So have you seen any changes in your wife?
I have. I think she is a little more receptive than she were before, a little more open to conversation and just some points that I may want to bring up that, hey, I'm not, in this particular area, maybe your tone is a little harsh, or in this particular area, I'm this is how I feel when you say this, where maybe in the past it was things that weren't received. But now I think that she's in a position to receive and understand that I'm not necessarily attacking her. I just think that there's some things that just need to be addressed and need to be worked on. And it's a continual process for all of us. And so whether you're, been saved 4 days, 4 months, 4 years, or 40 years, you're still in the midst of that process. And there's still some things in your life that need to be addressed and need to be changed. But if no one can come to you and say anything to you, then the things will never really get addressed.
It seems like what I'm hearing from both of you is that when you began praying together, each of you dropped your defenses. You became more vulnerable. You became more open. Is that what I'm hearing? So when you're at your most vulnerable and coming with humility, yeah. Now that's the word I'm looking for. Humility. That's what I'm really hearing from both of you. So the things that you might have said to each other at different times, but now there's a different level of humility with it. When you hear a person praying for you, that's what comes with it.
And another thing is that I kind of picked up on is communication. I work in communications, and sometimes there's can be a lot of interference, a lot of static, a lot of misunderstanding. But it seems like what I'm hearing is that when you started the 30 days of prayer, it also opened up the lines of communication. Thank you, guys. We love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We love you too.
It was so great talking with them. We've been encouraging folks to pray together for a couple of decades.
Yeah.
Not everyone has done it, but those who do, they always come back with amazing testimonies.
Besides praying together, the Colemans are doing some exciting things. Viewers, you can watch the entire interview on our website, themarriagetext.com/guests.
And we posted links to their social media and all the ways you can contact them. So be sure to check them out.
What we found out about praying together is this. Two of us praying together in unity is more powerful than two individuals praying separately. Check out Matthew 18:19.
After a crisis, couples might feel like they want to pull away from each other rather than moving towards each other. But that's the most important time to pray together. It's really kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it is. But there's definitely benefit from doing it.
Why don't you give your top 3 reasons?
Okay. Number 1, to experience healing and forgiveness. Number 2, to receive God's peace. And number 3, so we don't fall into temptation.
Cool. And we have a couple of resources to give you a jump start into praying together. If you subscribe to our website, you can get a free download of our 30-day prayer calendar. And there's also a downloadable couples prayer. And for those who want to upgrade, You can order our 30-day prayer challenge.
It comes with a verse of the day and a brief word of the day. We added those to help people, who may be new to prayer.
Mm-hmm. As we close, we want to remind you of the steps we covered today. Releasing through forgiveness and reconnecting through prayer.
If our shows are helping you and you want to find out more about the Marriage Service Technicians resources, services, and events, visit our website, themarriagetechs.com.
You can find out about our books and resources.
Get free downloads to help build your spiritual life.
Listen to our podcast and check out our blog.
And connect with us on social media.
And when you do, please subscribe, like us, and leave comments.
And definitely help spread the word. Tell others about us.
Now, we usually will close with a COVID-19 check-in with our children and grandkids. But in light of recent events, this month's check-in was quite a bit different. We did a Zoom call and we took like a temperature reading, so to speak. And everyone shared how they were coping with the pandemic and how they were coping with the racial tension and injustice surrounding recent events.
It was so rich. We didn't want to chop it up or, try to squeeze it at the end of the show. So we decided to post a whole conversation. Check it out on our website. In closing, we have a treat. My lovely wife is going to share some of her original poetry. What do you have for us today, sweetheart?
Well, let me start by saying that there's a line in the poem that speaks of receiving double for our shame. And that comes from Isaiah 61:7 that says, in Amplified, instead of your former shame, you will have a double portion. And instead of humiliation, your people will shout for joy over their portion. Therefore, in their land, they will possess double what they had already forfeited. Everlasting joy will be theirs. The piece is called I Forgive. I heard forgiveness would set the captive free. Didn't realize the captive was me. Those hurts and pains from long ago kept my mind enslaved and they vex my soul. So today I choose to make a choice that's wise, to loose myself as I cut the ties. My eyes are open, no longer blind to the truth that bitterness is the cord that binds, to the truth that bitterness is the cord that binds, to the truth that bitterness is the cord that binds. It binds you to the pain and the memories as it perpetuates tormented history. So no more pointing fingers or casting blame in order to receive double for my shame, in order to receive double for my shame, in order to receive double for my shame. I can see you think it's hard by that look on your face, but I say it's possible through God's amazing grace. Not saying what they did was fair or just, but vengeance is the Lord's. In him you gotta trust. Vengeance is the Lord's. In him you gotta trust. Vengeance is the Lord's. In him you gotta trust. So I admonish you now to get your release. Let that resentment go and embrace his peace. So join with me as I confess today, I'm forgiving everyone. Forgiveness is the way. I'm forgiving everyone. Forgiveness is the way. I'm forgiving everyone. Forgiveness is the way.
You don't drink nothing stronger than Mountain Dew.
And I'm a Cowboys fan, so maybe.
Oh no! Duffy ain't tell him nothing. Duffy didn't even prep the man. E-N-T-L-E-S, Eagles!
Oh man.